This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Recently, we asked some people about sharing their New York Times accounts.
My name is Dana. I am a subscriber to the New York Times, but my husband isn't. And it would be really nice to be able to share a recipe or an article or compete with him in Wordle or Connections. Thank you.
Dana, we heard you. Introducing the New York Times Family Subscription. One subscription, up to 4 separate logins for anyone in your life. Find out more at nytimes.com/family.
I called up the American Prospect's David Dayen yesterday because I had this question gnawing at me. As I watched the government sputter to a close on Tuesday, the whole project felt off. More like a whimper than a bang, which was weird because this show has been anticipating a government shutdown for weeks. And I knew that when I asked David why I was feeling this way, he'd have an answer for me.
Well, because we've really been in kind of a slow motion shutdown for quite a while now.
What David means here is that the Trump administration has been sending government employees home for months, clawing back federal funding, too. A shutdown is what happens when congressionally appropriated funds run out. But the truth is, Congress has been sitting on the sidelines of appropriations all year.
So the Trump administration has withheld something like, if we believe the calculations of the Senate and House Appropriations Committee's Democratic staffs, $410 billion in funding. That, just to give you the numbers, is close to half of all non-defense discretionary spending in the last fiscal year. The president has been spending on what he likes and not spending on what he doesn't like. And that's kind of what happens in a government shutdown. And so that's why I think it feels like nothing has fundamentally changed.
Different reporters have explained the cognitive dissonance of this moment in their own terms. Some have attributed the strangeness to which party seems most committed to pulling the federal plug. Unlike in previous shutdowns, Democrats are the ones who withheld their votes and effectively turned out the lights. But David says that framing is not quite fair.
The president, now bolstered by the Supreme Court, has the ability to pick and choose what he wants to spend. So, the idea that there's even government funding at all, rather than a government suggestion of funding that then the Emperor King decides, yes, I will send that funding out, or no, I won't, is quite ridiculous. That is the reality of this situation. It doesn't play into this narrative of, oh, one side wants X out of the government funding bucket and the other side wants Y. We are in a much more dire and strange situation.
What services are going to be impacted by a shutdown like this? Like, am I going to feel this in my everyday life?
Well, if you're an ICE agent, you're not, because they're going to keep going.
They're essential.
They have been deemed essential. Most federal workers, including those in the military and at the Department of Homeland Security, are going to continue to work without pay, but that pay will be delivered at such time that a resolution is reached. So
you're getting to this point, which I think is important, which is, I wonder if the problem here isn't so much people not being on the job, but people being on the job without pay, which creates a whole lot of tension pretty fast.
It's obviously a difficult situation, but federal workers have been going through a difficult situation for quite a while now. And in fact, tens of thousands of federal workers, right before this shutdown was imminent, wrote a letter to Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leaders in Congress saying, you have to hold the line. It's okay that I'm not going to get a paycheck. What's going on is the usurpation of the power of the purse from Congress and in the hands of one man, Donald Trump. And that is an unsustainable situation that cannot continue.
There have been a lot of government shutdowns and threatened government shutdowns in the last few years, decades, and they've all had their own winding path. Some have lasted just a day and some have lasted weeks. How long do you think this one will last?
Well, the longest shutdown in government history actually came under Donald Trump, and that was in 2018. It was the last government shutdown there was, and that lasted 35 days. Trump was trying to get money for his border wall, and he was unable to do so, and it just sort of withered away. The differences are so far apart in this case that I think it's going to last, if not that long, then maybe even longer.
There's no easy off-ramp.
There isn't.
Today on the show, the government is shut down. So now what? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. With the weather getting cooler, if you're like me, you're looking around for a couple of new items for your wardrobe, like a new sweater, some cute new kicks. And Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I went over to Saks.com to check out what they've got on tap, and I gotta say, what I love about clicking around their website is that every piece looks special, one of a kind, as if you'd walk into the office or a party and instantly grab everyone's attention. All the big brands are there, stuff like Alice and Olivia, you know, the young and trendy stuff. I love that I can see the care in every piece Saks has chosen for their fall collections. Each dress or pant or shoe feels a little bit elevated. So if you want shopping to be fun and easy, head over to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. And that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
So let's do a speed run through how we got here. Like, give me the TLDR version.
So back in March, there was this showdown over government funding. The Republicans wanted a continuing resolution to fund the government from March until September. This was right at the beginning of the Trump administration when we were starting to see all this DOGE stuff and cuts to programs and dismantling of federal agencies. And at that time, Chuck Schumer said, nope, we're not going to do anything. A shutdown would be worse. And we're going to participate in this continuing resolution, a clean continuing resolution to fund the government.
This made his base very, very mad.
That's correct. And I have to say those people were kind of vindicated. It's like that meme where the haters said I was wrong and they were right. You got to hand it to the haters. Because Schumer now is saying, actually, what happened is we passed a resolution to fund the government and the president didn't follow it. He withheld funding. He fired workers. He dismantled agencies like the USAID, the Agency for International Development, and so on. So this time around, while the White House is making these threats saying, oh, well, if you don't fund the government, we're going to make this very painful on our federal agencies and we're going to do mass layoffs of workers, Democrats don't really see that as a threat. They just see that as a continuation of everything that's been happening for the last several months.
Yeah, it's interesting because everyone knew this deadline was coming. Like even Schumer himself was like, okay, the real deal is going to be in September. And they couldn't even get around a table. Like, there kept being these announcements like, okay, like congressional leaders are coming to the White House. Then it'd be like, boop, no, they're not. That happened twice. And then all of a sudden, same week as the shutdown, it's like, okay, people are going to the White House. And they show up and it seems like nothing happens there, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it was, the euphemism that will be used is a frank exchange of views.
Which means no one agreed.
Which means nobody agreed with anybody and nothing really productive happened.
Just sum up what the negotiations were theoretically over. What do the Democrats want? And what does Donald Trump want?
It's a bit frustrating because what the Democrats say they want in public doesn't totally match what they're actually saying in private. So in public, this fight is all about healthcare. So there is a cliff coming up whereby at the end of the year, enhanced subsidies for the Affordable Care Act premium coverage. So if you are on the Affordable Care Act exchanges and you make a certain amount of money, you're not going to pay more than, I think it's 8.5% of your income in insurance premiums.
Gosh, that's still so much too.
That's still a lot, but it's going to go way up for certain people if these enhanced subsidies expire. And it's in fact going to go up by an average of 75%. And that's going to cause health insurance to be unaffordable for a lot of people. According to the Congressional Budget Office, 4 million people will lose their health insurance coverage as a result of this. And so Democrats are talking about restoring permanently those enhanced subsidies. They're also talking about restoring cuts to Medicaid that were made just a few months ago in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was passed by the Republicans on a party line vote.
What are they saying in private this is about?
In private, they're saying what I think is quite obvious. How do you make a budget deal with somebody who won't honor the budget deal? As I've said, there have been these mass withholdings of funding for all manner of programs. There have been these mass firings of federal workers. And none of that is approved by Congress. Congress appropriated money, which the president is supposed to spend, and the president is picking and choosing what he spends. And so in the actual document that Democrats have submitted as their counteroffer, they have said the president can't rescind money or impound money. The president has to spend what we say that the president needs to spend, which is just kind of common sense, isn't it?
Yeah, in normal world, these seem like reasonable asks, but in Trump world, they sound like existential threats, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the president and his staff, including Russ Vought, who is the director of the Office of Management and Budget, they have wanted for a long time the president to be in control of the power of the purse, which the Constitution very expressly gives to Congress. And they have wanted to pick this fight over impoundment for a long, long time. And the Supreme Court, in a number of rulings, is kind of siding with the president here, which puts Congress in this position of essentially being dissolved. I mean, the power of the purse is probably the most important power that Congress is given. And if the president is allowed to pick and choose what he decides to spend, you've essentially given that power over to the executive branch. And it's a fundamental change in our system of government. And this shutdown, if Democrats were actually talking about it, could be an opportunity to really highlight that and explain what is going on.
I want to take a moment to just highlight how unhinged the executive branch is being about this shutdown. Like, for example, earlier this week on shutdown eve, the president posted this quite racist deepfake video of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. Like, they literally slapped a sombrero on Jeffries, and they said the Democrats want to fund healthcare for quote unquote illegal immigrants. None of this, that's not true. It's not something you post when you want to negotiate with someone. And then today, you just reported that employees at the Small Business Administration are being instructed to make their out-of-office messages during the shutdown expressly political. Like, basically be like, this is the Democrats' fault. All of this seems so abnormal.
Yeah, and it's a continuation of some things that they've been doing all week. The Housing and Urban Development Department at their website, if you go to their website, it just says the radical Democrats have shut down the government. There is actually a federal law called the Hatch Act that says that cabinet agencies can't act in a political manner. And clearly, what HUD is doing, what this out of office message is doing, et cetera, is a violation of that act. If you know, that it would be quaint if violations of law were enforced these days. But it's definitely a real departure from the way in which federal agencies have talked about shutdowns in the past, usually just expressing sympathy with their workers who are put in an impossible position, some of them having to work for no pay, some of them being furloughed with an unclear sense of when they would be put back on the job and get back pay. But there's none of that going on here. It's pure partisan politics.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
A healthy lifestyle starts with good sleep so your body and mind can recharge. If you're struggling with restless nights and looking for a natural way to wind down without relying on over-the-counter sleep aids, try melatonin-free cornbread hemp CBD sleep gummies. Melatonin is a hormone that can cause grogginess, nightmares, or sleepwalking in some people. So Cornbread Hemp left it out to produce America's first USDA organic, melatonin-free CBD gummy. Fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer with CBD sleep gummies that are infused with full-spectrum, flower-only hemp extract and include natural botanicals like valerian root, lavender, and chamomile. They're vegan, gluten-free, and made without a sugar coating. Just clean, natural ingredients. Rest deeply and wake up ready to move with melatonin-free Cornbread Hemp CBD sleep gummies. Right now, Cornbread Hemp is offering 30% off your first order. Just go to cornbreadhemp.com/whatnext and use code WhatNext at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/whatnext, code WhatNext for 30% off.
Hey, it's Anna Sale, host of Death, Sex, and Money, the podcast from Slate about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. And recently we asked you to tell us stories about your beauty interventions, what you've decided to invest time and money in to improve your appearance.
So I looked at my dad, and I looked at him carefully. And I said, no. We are going to sail in a different direction than this.
We heard from people who spent thousands on plastic surgery, fillers, and skincare routines, and from others who decided to reject pressure, like covering grays.
It's kind of like, why do I need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for you? Is it for you? Or because you're embarrassed to have a friend or a spouse with gray hair? I mean, what is the encouragement from?
And you told us about feeling caught between viewing appearance improvements as vanity and recognizing how much looking a certain way affects your relationships, career, and self-worth.
I'd like to think of myself as a person with depth, a person who values intelligence and kindness, and yet sometimes I worry that my appearance and the doors that my appearance have opened, those are going to close if I don't continue to look this particular way.
Listen to this episode and more Death, Sex, and Money episodes wherever you get podcasts.
You know, when I listen to you and read your writing, you tend to keep singling out one White House official as someone to watch during the shutdown, as someone who maybe even is driving the shutdown energy, and that's the Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought. Can you just explain his role here and why you think he's so central?
Well, Vought was an architect of Project 2025. He was one of the lead writers on that project. He was OMB director at the end of the first Trump term. And in the 4 years when Joe Biden was president, he was writing all sorts of position papers and white papers and concepts that basically said, what we really need is a president who has the power to dictate federal spending. And he even wrote about, we can use the shutdowns as leverage in order to come up with the government that we really, really want.
What kind of government is that?
One that is extremely limited, that has a skeleton crew operating, really only doing the essential work that is statutorily required. And he wants to, at least rhetorically, leverage this. Now, it should be said that shutdowns they confer no additional authority on any member of the executive branch to engage in mass layoffs, to change the structure of these agencies whatsoever.
And that's important to point out, because last week there was this reporting that Russ Vought was basically saying, okay, if there's a shutdown, we'll just fire a bunch of people. Like, usually people are put on leave without pay and then they come back. But he's like, no, let's turn out the lights. You're never coming back. But What you're saying is that authority doesn't exist.
That authority doesn't exist. The federal unions have already sued over that memo, not even the actual taking away. And also, it's pretty clear that it was a bluff, because if you look at the agency plans for the shutdown, it's temporary layoffs. It's not actually mass firings. Now, I'm sure that this pressure could increase, and Vought could characterize some of the things he wants to do as because of the shutdown, but that's really rhetorical in nature. He's just doing what he wants to do anyway and hoping the Supreme Court will bless it. And that's been true since the beginning of the administration. The shutdown is really immaterial to that, in my view.
But it's interesting to me just to see how much he's gotten inside the president's head. Like, just yesterday, there was this reporting that, Trump himself was alluding to these allegedly awesome powers he might have during a shutdown, saying Russell Vought has told him he could do irreversible things like cut benefits and health care and, lay people off, which is a dire threat. But I have to say, I look at it and I also think it's kind of a dumb threat, because if Trump and his White House decided to cut benefits for people on government health care or permanently fire people during a shutdown, that would 100% be a decision they'd have to own.
Right.
And we know that members of the public don't like shutdowns. This would be like a shutdown on speed.
Yeah. I mean, if you're telling me that the president heard something that flattered him and that he wanted to hear, and then he repeated it, I'm going to say I'm not surprised. But you're absolutely right that these are more empty threats than reality. And that's proven by the fact that one of the biggest sort of consumer-facing real-world consequences of shutdowns often are the closure of national parks, because people plan trips around going to Yosemite or going elsewhere, and they come up to the front gates and they're closed and they're pissed off, and then they agitate about it.
Well, notably, national parks are open this time around.
That's right. So Donald Trump wouldn't even go to that length if he was so sure that Democrats would be blamed for shutting down the government. Why is he moving money around to make sure that nobody is affected by it in any way? And so it shows to me that this is kind of empty, and it shows to me that Donald Trump, or at least people around him, are a little concerned that Republicans will be blamed for the shutdown. And in fact, if you look at the polling, at least early polling, where we begin on day one of the shutdown, Republicans are being held more responsible. And when it comes to independent voters, that's by a 2-to-1 margin.
It makes sense, because Donald Trump has spent the last few months telling them, I am the unitary executive. I have all the power.
Right. How are you blaming these random people who you said don't matter functionally in the government anymore? If it's I alone can fix it, and it's a rule by the dictator or by the individual autocrat, then if the government shuts down, who do you think is going to get blamed for it?
So we're talking about this blame issue. And it feels like blame is really, it's going to tell us a lot about where this fight goes next. You've laid out the evidence that the American public sees the GOP as responsible at this point for what's happening with the government shutdown. I don't know how long that will last. I can't tell. And I have this theory, which is that to win this fight, the Democrats need to make their support visible and clear to the president and the public. Like, they need to make it so clear that government workers stand with them in this moment and the American people are behind them to force the conversation to change. First of all, are you with me on that? Second of all, are there any signs they're actually doing that? Because to me, that seems to be the weakest point for the Democrats moving forward.
I mean, to me, shutdowns are attention-grabbing moments. There aren't a lot of people out there outside of us political junkies that know that the president has been routinely withholding funding from government programs. They don't know that there has been this mass terror campaign practically on federal workers. They don't know that these fundamental issues about our system of government, that Congress holds the power of the purse, are being upset and upended by this president. So Democrats' challenge is to outline the stakes. Now, what are Democrats doing? They're making this fight entirely about healthcare. One arrow in their quiver there is that, as I mentioned, these Affordable Care Act subsidies expire at the end of the year. Well, what happens when you're on the exchanges is you get something in the mail or in your email that says, it's time to re-enroll for 2026, and here's what it's going to cost you to maintain your coverage. That's when people will see, staring them in the face, a 75% increase or more.
Is that going to happen anytime soon?
Yes, those go out in October. So it's the 1st of October. So this month, people are going to start getting those messages. And it's going to be hard for Donald Trump to deny that reality once it's staring millions of people in the face. And so that could be a way that this changes. But until you have a moment like that, I think we're just going to be at an impasse.
That really gets into how this shutdown ends. And it's complicated by what you said before, which is the fact that the Democrats are really talking about a couple of things at the same time. Publicly, they're talking about healthcare subsidies, and that it seems like there's going to be this attentional event in the next few weeks that might get Americans to focus on it and give the Democrats some leverage. But the real problem, the problem at the heart of things, the reason why this shutdown is happening, I would argue, is because of this power grab by the executive branch to basically try to control all of government, what kind of money gets spent, even though that power is supposed to rest with Congress. And that seems like a harder fight to win because there's not going to be an attentional event unless the Democrats make it happen.
Yeah. My view is if I'm a legislator, I don't know how I could give my vote to a budget resolution that I don't believe is going to be honored. And maybe one way out of this is a way that would change how Congress works. So Republicans control the House of Representatives. The House has already passed a continuing resolution to fund the government for several weeks. Republicans control the U.S. Senate. They have a majority of votes in the U.S. Senate. And they have all the votes that they kind of need if they want to just end the filibuster for budget questions and pass this on their own. And I kind of feel like this is a moment where if Democrats don't want to participate in something that they feel is illegal and that diminishes the power of Congress, they can say, all right, Republicans, if you want to do it, end the filibuster. You know how to end the filibuster. You know how to change the Senate rules with a majority vote. In fact, Republicans have changed Senate rules on multiple occasions this year when Democrats were being, I guess, inconvenient to them. Well, Democrats are being pretty inconvenient right now, and the result is a government shutdown. So just end the filibuster. What are we doing here?
Isn't that bad for the American people, though, at least for the next year or two?
Really, is it? I don't know that it is. I think it's good for accountability in the future. It's good for the concept that elections have consequences. It's good for Democrats who mostly want to pass things that are blocked by a filibuster relative to Republicans who mostly want to pass things like tax cuts and judicial nominations that don't need a filibuster. I think that over the long term, for the health of this country, for the idea that you elect someone who can carry out a program, I actually think it would be better.
Because Donald Trump would own everything that happened, and the Republicans in the legislature would as well.
Well, and by the same token, that Democrats wouldn't have an excuse if they get into power for why they are not following through the program that they put forward on the campaign trail. If majorities can't rule, it becomes very difficult to have any kind of accountability, small d, democratic accountability in this country. And so my view is that the filibuster is the real impediment here to the government shutdown. If there wasn't a filibuster, we wouldn't be having a government shutdown. And so we need to think seriously about, well, why do we have one?
I'm not sure that we're going to need to get there. Like the other night when they were voting on the continuing resolution, there were already Democrats who seemed willing to settle with the Republicans. I'm talking about Democratic Senators Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada and John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, Senator Angus King, who's an independent but caucuses with the Democrats from Maine. There's not that many more people who need to be picked off here by the Republicans, huh?
It's certainly possible that Democrats will give in, that maybe they'll get a fig leaf of, oh, we'll have a negotiation about healthcare subsidies later, which, by the way, Republicans kind of need a resolution on healthcare subsidies, because if everybody's healthcare, or if millions of people's healthcare skyrockets by 75% on their insurance premiums, they're going to pay a price for that in the elections. It's one reason why I think it's a little weird that Democrats want to trade something Republicans want, which is government funding, for something Republicans need, which is a resolution of the healthcare subsidy situation so that they aren't held accountable for the consequences of their actions. It's kind of an odd trade from a political standpoint. Obviously, we don't want millions of people to lose their health insurance coverage, but politically, what do you actually get out of that is the question. And so I do think that Democrats might settle. Since they're making the entire thing about healthcare, they might settle for a future vote or future conversation down the road on healthcare. And I think that we're in a situation right now where Democrats in the rank and file, the ordinary people who consider themselves Democrats, are super frustrated with their leadership in Washington at a level that rivals how frustrated Republicans were with their leadership right before Donald Trump announced for president in 2015. And I think that this anger and frustration, especially if this government funding fight essentially ends with a whimper, that's going to play out in very unpredictable ways in the coming years.
I mean, you certainly have a lot more F around and find out energy than 99.9% of Democrats on Capitol Hill, I'd say.
That may be the case, Mary. But look, I think that there is a disconnect within the party. The real dividing line in Democratic politics right now is not necessarily ideological. It's whether or not you give a damn enough to fight against creeping authoritarianism. And if Democratic leaders in the Senate don't want to do that, I think they're the ones that are effing around, and they are going to find out.
David, I'm always so grateful to have you on the show. Thanks for coming.
All right, thanks a lot.
David Dayen is the executive editor of The American Prospect. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. Paige Osburn is the supervising producer of What Next and What Next TBD. Mia Lobel is the head of audio at Slate. Ben Richmond is the senior director of podcast operations. And I'm Mary Harris. You can go track me down on Blue Sky. Say, hey, I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.